Good afternoon. Thanks for everyone who's joining us. My name is Neil Hudson-Basing. I'm the Corporate Events Manager at London South Bank University. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with colleagues from the Business School on this event series. This is the second instalment. During the first part of lockdown, we held 5 events in the first instalment, all really well received. And this second series is just as popular and incredibly valuable in terms of addressing the learning needs of our staff, our students, and our local community. I will be on hand kind of like throughout the event to kind of manage the chat box. Please do feel free to share your thoughts and comments in the chat box. Really keen to hear from you, hear what you've got to say in response to Charles's lecture. Yeah, we're really keen to kind of like maintain that spirit of networking and community and break down that virtual wall that we're all facing right now. Do put your comments in the chat box, and when it comes to Q&A time, I'll let you know, and we'll work our way through the questions. If you'd like to ask a live question, please just feel free to pop your camera on and unmute yourself, and we'll try and do some live questions as well. That's all from me. Charles, over to you.
That's great, wonderful. Thanks, Neil, and how nice to be here. It's very good to talk to a slightly wider audience, especially people who I used to teach, but it's really exciting. And I'm still getting used to the online presentation thing. It is slightly odd. I found that I get rather boring and talk for hours to my computer because I haven't got the pressure of an audience. So do interrupt if you want to. Okay, so I'm Charles Graham. I'm a lecturer in marketing, and I want to show you a bit of research that I did fairly recently about the way that Gen Z is using apps on phones. And the reason I'm interested in that is because I'm interested in it as an advertising medium. So I wrote the title before I wrote the lecture, but anyway, that's the way the cookie crumbles, because there's going to be big changes, or there are already big changes in the industry, and third-party cookies are on their way out. So new marketing. All marketers love new, right? We love new. We like to differentiate using new, and that's fine. And we get very overexcited with the concept of new, but we need to manage marketing as well. And one thing that I'm finding I used to be a marketer, but now I'm a researcher and an academic. And one of the things that I'm finding is you don't always have to have new theories to explain new phenomena. So this lecture, this talk is about some old theory that I've applied to the way that people use apps. And I think it's interesting because I think it opens the way for some new uses, or certainly a new way of thinking about in-app advertising, which I think is a really exciting and going to be a big development. So new for marketing and advertising, yes, of course, because it draws attention to ourselves. It says I'm stepping forward, I'm doing more, I'm advancing. But also we don't need to keep inventing the wheel. Maybe I'd love to know what you think about this, actually. So first of all, some charts, and here's one I stole from Walk, I think. This is a long-term view, and that's kind of what I'm interested in my research. And this is showing us where advertising pounds are being spent in the UK since the turn of the millennium. And I think this is a really interesting chart, and I show it to my students quite a lot because it shows something that's not always expressed sensibly, I don't think. What it shows is where the money's going, and the bottom of the bars is TV, and what it says is TV is absolutely as important to advertisers today as it always has been. I've got to say, obviously, the advertising take has fallen by at least a third this year. I mean, it's dropped off a cliff like everything else. But up to 2019, it was looking a bit like this. So the spend on TV looks absolutely solid. In fact, it seems to be going up. So there must be a reason for that, and the reason is probably it works. But I keep reading bits of article and white papers and blogs and things that say, well, you know, TV is declining, and the reason people are saying that is because it's declining as a proportion of an increasing ad spend. And where is the increase? The increase is in here. The big increases in paid search, obviously, and that seems to me to be incremental spend. I mean, it's taking from some of the other media, but it's a massive increase, you know, of new money going into advertising over the past 2 decades, and it's doing a particular job that TV doesn't do. I mean, the idea of search is people are already searching. So paid search is a way of steering people towards a purchase that are already just about to make a purchase. Whereas TV advertising does a different job. It maintains the ideas about the brand in people's minds. So these are two different roles for advertising, and so I don't see them as necessarily competing with each other. They're different things. The blob that I'm really interested in, though, is this one. So this one is digital display, and that's ads that were in web browsers and now are moving more and more into apps. And the thing that's interesting about this one is that it's getting to be as big as TV. And so that means it's going to have the reach of TV. I think it definitely has got the reach of TV potentially. And it seems to me that that is a whole new channel. So this is really what I'm talking about in this lecture, the idea of digital display moving into mobile apps. That's the thing that I'm really interested in, because more and more time we're spending on our phones, and more time on our phones looking at apps. So that seems to me to be a new medium and an important one. So I love this chart because I think it shows absolutely dramatic changes, new things, lots of change, lots of flux, lots of movement, lots of things for marketers to sort of try and catch up with. And it's exactly a case in point. How do we understand how to use these tools, and do the old theories work for us? So up until, you know, I mean, if you think about digital, you're thinking about behavioral targeting, right? You're thinking about the way that behavioral data is being collected and used to target individuals as they move around the web, and so although Google say people prefer ads that are personalized to their needs, the reality of that is that comes about because data is being collected. It's being used to target people as they move around, and as they get closer to the buying decision, it's steering them towards the buy button or the download button. And because this data is working is working for sales lift, it's easy to demonstrate a return. I mean, you know, you can see all the activities, you can see the actions, you can see the downloads, the clicks, and all the rest of it. So that makes it possible to charge by results, and that makes it compelling. And as you know, for 20 years has made it compelling for advertisers. It works with cookies, right? I mean, the first party cookie is a way of creating a relationship between the website, the user, and the website. You go through web pages, you hover over things, you look at things, you move towards the purchase, and the server sends a cookie which sits on your browser and identifies you and identifies all your data. And so it works on a session when you're buying something, but it works on your next session too, because the browser recognizes you. Sorry, the server recognizes you. But and what we're more concerned about is these third-party cookies. So you know, there am I with my website, and I'm making a bit of money by putting some advertising on it. And the advertising is also serving cookies. So I'm sure you recognize what this is, but you know, a third-party cookie is somebody else's cookie sitting here, and that's collecting information as you move through other websites. And that's the thing that people are getting exercised about, because partly they don't understand it, and partly, although they're clicking something that says yes, I agree, when they think about it a bit harder, they might say no, I don't really agree. Anyway, there are various problems with third-party cookies, and there have been for a while. And the upshot of it is that they're not really going to be used for very much longer. So there's various reasons for that all over the place. And this is an interesting list, as we'll see. I mean, in the first place, there's data protection regulations that have come into place, and so actually using cookies makes the user experience not better but worse, because you've got to agree and click here, there, and everywhere, and it gets in the way and it makes us nervous. But mainly they're disappearing, I think, because there's a sort of big tech marketing war going on. Apple are positioning themselves as being privacy, differentiating on privacy, and they're not supporting third-party cookies anymore. Google are still trying to decide what to do about it, I think. Google Chrome's got 50-something% share of the browser market, and it's trying to hang on to it, and Apple is trying to do something about that by getting more share of the browser market. It's the advertiser in the middle that's the main casualty of this. I keep reading things that saying, well, you know, what are we going to do next? And partly that's what this lecture is about. Consumers, the users of the internet, not the advertisers and their agencies, but consumers are getting online in dramatically different way, because they're doing it on their phones now. And if they're doing it on their phones, they're doing it less and less through browsers and more through apps, because they're more convenient and quicker. And apps don't work with cookies. So you know, there's another reason why third-party cookies are disappearing. The thing about the app, though, I mean, the app does record your device ID, and that's at least something about you that links you to what's going on. Another reason why we don't like third-party cookies is the way that they're used in programmatic and where your brand may end up. So although people all over the place are saying this is getting to be less and less of a problem, it does still happen that your brand ends up in pretty strange company. And although there was some boycotts quite well publicized fairly recently, the big platforms are doing something about it, and it, you know, it might be getting better. But in any case, a lot of the problems with that were to do with third-party cookies. Academics are not very convinced by third-party data. I've read at least 2 papers now where they say, well, actually, it's about as good as chance. If you buy a profile data set, it doesn't do much for you. The more money you spend, the better it gets. But at the basic level, it's actually as good as chance. And then there's consumers, and you know, that absolutely seems to me they're almost at the bottom of the list. I mean, the advertisers are being pushed around, and consumers are being pushed around too. But we don't like cookies, and that plays out in their usefulness, because we're clearing them out. So, you know, every time you delete the cookies out of your browser, that's it. And I've read several places the average life of a cookie is 24 hours, so it's not collecting data on you for very long. So given all that, I mean, it's inevitable that they're going, and they definitely are going. And I guess the question then is, what's going to take their place? And what seems to be taking their place outside the areas where you sign in, because obviously where you sign in, then your data is there and it's being collected and you're connecting back to it. But outside those walled gardens, what seems to be happening is the idea of contextual advertising. Well, contextual advertising is different from behavioural. Behavioural advertising is where you follow the user, and contextual advertising is where you know that the users are going to be on an app or a website, and so you target the website or the app. That's an incredibly familiar idea, right? I mean, that's the way that people put ads in newspapers or thought about putting ads on TV. It's a very familiar concept for anybody who's in advertising. It's got a it's got a twist. I mean, you can do it in a very, very targeted way. If you're using a browser, you can use keywords and you can put ads next to text. But if you're using mobile apps as a medium, then what you're literally doing is choosing apps where you think your target audience is sitting, and that's what we've always done. And why I think that's important is because of the way that we're picking up on the phones. I mean, 3/4 of UK adults spend 3 hours a day on average on mobile phones. So that actually is the same reach and engagement as we've got with TV. In fact, it's a bit more than TV. I mean, when do we go to work, right? But that in people's hands, right there, is access to the whole world, including shopping, and that's amazing, as I'm sure you know. So here we are outside here, thinking about, we can't use third-party cookies. They're just going to disappear anyway, no matter whether we like them or not. So what is the implications for contextual advertising, especially on mobile? So mobile advertising is big business. Last year, $300 billion of global advertising revenue went to mobile app publishers. Guess where it went? 2/3 of it went to Facebook and Google. And in that case, if you sign into an app, there we are. The targeting thing can happen without a problem because they've already got your data. But 1/3 of it is going into quite a fragmented and an emerging publishing industry that is based on this contextual targeting in the app, and they can't use cookies. So we've got to think of a different way of doing it. Okay, so that's the problem. I mean, the thing that I'm interested in is that 1/3 and how that's operating. And I've seen various agencies talking and selling their ideas. And a typical sales pitch is all about targeting. It's all about saying, on my app, I've got these kind of users. They use the app a lot. They're highly engaged. You can carry on doing the sort of targeting you're doing without cookies because you can target people on these apps. So the typical sales pitch is the audience on my app is going to be different from the audience on somebody else's app, different from the audience that you can get anywhere else. That's also a very familiar message, and the reason why they're talking that way is because they want your advertising. They want to pay. They want to make money out of the ads on their app, so they're selling the app. It's exactly the same as the way that magazines sell space, or used to still sell space. So I think we've got some big opportunities for advertisers here. I mean, they might, recently there was for one reason or another, advertisers might not want to be inside the Facebook and Google domain. They might want to do it on their own. Or the other big thing is, are we really targeting too much? So P&G a few years ago recognized that they were spending too much money on targeting and not quite enough on brand advertising. And I've read some really interesting articles about this. This is one of them. Are you targeting too much? We need a balance. I mean, Bennett and Field's work about activation and long-term brand building, the long and the short of it, this kind of stuff. We need a balance between the sales lift stuff and the brand lift stuff. And that's where I think the opportunity might be. So sales lift is talking to people who are really high propensity to buy right now. So they might be heavy buyers of category brand, or it might just be a timing thing, but they're going to buy right now. And that gives you an immediate sales lift, and why not? But if you put all of your money into that, you're ignoring the long-term thing, which is building up the brand for the next time there's going to be a category purchase. So brand lift advertising is the kind of stuff that you might see on TV traditionally, because the benefit of TV is it reaches massive audience and builds the brand among the lightest buyers as well as the heaviest buyers. So can we do that same thing with digital display, and particularly in mobile? And one of the problems we've got there is we're measuring different things, so there's no consistency in measurement, and that's really where my questions came from. So building on that, is there any way that we can use in-app, mobile in-app advertising as a broad reach medium? I mean, it's as big, and the obvious answer that might come back is, well, it's highly fragmented. But that didn't stop all the TV channels. When that came, we used to have one commercial TV channel. It fragmented, and we're still putting ads on TV, and we're still not finding segmented audience. Can we use mobile in-app as a broad reach medium, and will it work outside the places where we can use data for close targeting? And all of that really boils down to, can we use this stuff in the same way? Can we measure it in the same way as we measure TV? And I recently read some of the Facebook blurb about how they've been using reach and frequency metrics with really big brands. And I thought, well, yeah, why not? So what are the rules? So what are the rules for TV advertising, and do they apply for apps? And what we know about the TV audience, and what I've done here is taken a book from the 1980s by Paddy Barwise and Andrew Ehrenberg, who were both at London Business School, and this was their kind of definitive text about the TV audience. And what they found from their research was there isn't any much segmentation. Particular TV programs don't draw identifiable subgroups. The audience composition for programs is very, very mixed across different types of TV program, or different categories of TV program. The big thing is the size of the audience, the reach. I mean, and that's big because it's big for advertisers. You use TV because you want reach. In that context, TV viewers across the course of a week don't just devote all of their time on screen to one program. They watch a mixture of shows, and they watch a lot of TV. And it seems to me that's probably what's going on with apps. People use a lot of apps because they're part of their life, and they use the phones a lot. So again, there's probably a big overlap here. And what Barwise and Ehrenberg found was, when they were looking at the audience, TV audience, they saw that reach was far higher than share of total viewing. So what that means is the reach for a particular channel, category, or program is much higher than its share of total viewing. So what that means is lots of people are watching a program, but it's not a very big part of their total use. Again, sounds exactly like the way I use my phone. I don't know about you. But it seemed to me that if we could get the data, if we could get a small data set, we could have a look and see how people are using apps and what the composition of that audience looks like across different categories of apps. So what I find with a lot of my research is, I'm not looking at a single thing. I'm looking at the way the aggregate market behaves, and apps or brands compete with each other. So the idea here is to look at the whole audience and see how they split their attention across apps. Second thing we know about the TV audience really is that you don't really find a small, highly focused audience that particularly watches just skiing or just listens to heavy metal or something. So lower rating programs, that means any TV program with a smaller audience has lower engagement metrics, we might say. So it's got lower repeat rate, and it's got less hours of viewing, and that is a classic double jeopardy pattern. More people do things a little bit more, and Ehrenberg and Barwise found that in their viewing data. And it's a long-standing, this theory is old now, so people keep coming back to it, and the one reason that they've come back to it is people have looked at the environment and said, oh, it's a bit fragmented. So that must mean we've got specialist audiences. And there's 3 examples there where people have looked and they haven't found it. And it's the same now with the app market. The claim is the audience on my app is highly specialized, highly engaged. They spend a long time, so there's plenty of opportunity for them to see and read and engage with an ad that gets served. So I think it's important to look at user engagement with mobile apps and see if we can test it, we can measure it. There's a little piece of algebra that says this much reach should give you this much engagement. So that's the second question. The third thing was duplication of viewing. This is a classic tool that the TV schedulers, radio people use. It says that it's a law. It's a duplication of viewing law, and it's built into lots of algorithms now. The proportion of the audience for program B that also watches program A varies pretty much only in line with the rating for program A. That's because there isn't any segmentation. There's nothing special about that audience. It's a great big sea of sharing, and it comes out to be across all of the sharing. Gerald Goodhart in 1966. I mean, this is old stuff. There's a duplication coefficient of 1. Just because I watch Panorama doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to watch, I don't know, Newsnight. I've got an equal chance of watching both. So can we do some duplication of viewing across apps? Okay, this is taking ages, sorry. So just to get down to it, I couldn't get commercial big data set, but I could get a lot of students. So I put together a panel of users, and I'm very grateful to Dag Bennett here, because he said, look, you've got this screen time app on everyone's phone, and it records what time you're spending on apps. And he had this great idea. Why don't we record that as a panel? So we did, and we got 110 of our undergraduates to agree to do this, and we collected nearly 3,000 hours of on-app screen time. So it's a small panel, but we did it for a week, so we got something to look at. And I mean, in comparison with the volume of data out there, this is almost nothing, but I do think that it was enough to get what we wanted. So we could see, what was the most popular app. We could see the hours spent on each of the apps, and so on. And we also had the behavioural, the segmentation data about the users. So I'm going to just whiz through the three questions and see what we've got. So this was interesting. So here we go. So we've got at the top of this table, we've got 100% of all the viewing time and everybody in there. And we've got 27 hours on average per person per week. So that's 3 and almost 4 hours per day, which is pretty much what Gen Z is supposed to be using their mobile phones for. So that's quite a nice check on what we've got. We've got a pattern in here that is exactly what Barwise and Ehrenberg found on TV. We've got the share of the total hours. We've got a really big share of hours on social media on the big 5 there, and everybody used them, and they spent 21 hours. So across the big social media, everyone's using it, and they're using it a lot. As you go down, music and video apps, we've got 11% share of total hours, so much less time, but it's the same pattern as TV. You've got almost everybody in that category, although they're doing it a little bit, and so on down to the really small ones. You've still got a big reach, but a low engagement time. Now, you students of Double Jeopardy will see that there's a pretty clear Double Jeopardy pattern in here. The more people you've got on an app, the more time they're spending on it on average. But you've got small apps reaching large numbers of people some of the time. So if we're interested in the broad reach view of advertising, this is really good finding, because it means we've got reach in the apps. We've got much lower engagement, but we've got reach. So that was good. So the second part of that question was, well, what does the composition of this audience look like across the apps? And we split it by gender, because we didn't want to split more than that, because we didn't have big numbers. Plus, that's basically all we had anyway. But what we found was, again, what Barwise and Ehrenberg found, there really isn't much between the genders in the way that these apps are being used. So that really supports the findings for the TV viewing. It looks pretty similar. There is some differences. Men spend a little bit more time on apps than women. They spend a bit less on social media than women do. There's not much in dating apps either, although women are a bit less interested in it, looks like. So but small. So they're really very broadly similar in terms of audience composition. Broadly, these apps are talking to the same types of people. So when we get to the second question, we've already seen there's a double jeopardy pattern. My idea was, can we predict engagement in terms of the amount of time spent on an app, just from the number of people who are using it? So we can use reach to predict hours spent. And this is a really amazing model, because it's so simple. It's just those two metrics, and it works really closely for brand buying. And here we are in media, and it looks the same. Look, all these blue dots are the observed values. The line is the prediction. So it's really close on it up until we get to sort of really high reach, and then it under predicts a bit. So sorry, over predicts. So if we want a rule of thumb for how the media is going to perform in terms of engagement, we can do it in terms of the reach of the media, and that's quite a useful model. There are better models for it, but this one gives us a really good handle, I think. So that was quite good. And then the third thing we wanted to look at was duplication. So I made obviously I made a duplication table, and then here I've spun it around just to show you. I'm going to see if I can move this. Okay, so users of Snapchat who also use Instagram, Facebook, Tinder, 8-Ball Pool, Scrabble, Run Race. So these are all apps that carry advertising. The duplication across all of those other apps comes out, you can get an average duplication, and there we are. And when I used the model, well, I mean, there's not much of a model in it, because the duplication coefficient is about 1. But you can see that it's predicting it very closely. There aren't many apps there that are showing that they're over duplicating with each other. So a user of Spotify and a user of Tinder are over duplicating or under duplicating. It's all very even across the whole piece. And that in TV scheduling, that's an important finding, because it tells you how you can build unique reach. And that's a useful thing, because you don't want to waste money sending the same ads to the same people over and over again. So it looks to me like that's good. And then I suppose the big finding then is, well, for me the big finding is that app usage is really following all the laws that we know for TV and for radio. And this was a Gen Z sample, so they're supposed to be difficult to reach with any other medium. So that that's kind of interesting. But the laws that we've got are applying in the use of mobile apps, and so that means, I think, that might open the door to a different view of what we do, whether we go targeting, sales lift, brand lift. It might encourage people on in this medium start thinking a little bit more about doing reach and frequency metrics and seeing what that does, because I think that will give advertisers a bit more flexibility. But also, it means if we start to use reach and frequency in this medium, we can compare the two strategies. You know, whether it's sales lift or brand lift, we can see a little bit more closely. So nearly there, final slide. That's the way the cookie crumbles. The first thing I thought really was we're not losing third-party cookies thanks to consumers. It's really the bigger environment. I think you can teach an old dog, and just to sort of follow through with these silly phrases and sayings, you can teach an old dog new tricks. It seems to me that existing theory does work pretty well at trying to explain new phenomena, or at least to give us an understanding of what's going on, and that's kind of important. Don't buy a pig in a poke. I think mobile in-app advertising is going to be very important, but I don't think that people buying advertising in apps should be fooled by the hype. Even this little bit of data here seems to suggest that individual apps won't provide you with a heavily engaged and closely targeted audience. And I think it's horses for courses. I think targeted digital is really good for sales lift. Obviously it is, it works. We know, we can see it works, but I think we need to also focus on the brand lift ideas. And I think that's very important. My friends, that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Charles, for a really, really insightful lecture. Really engaging. It's shocking how much time we spend on our phones just from looking at that. And I know that when my phone tells me how long I've spent on something, I kind of cringe at how long I've spent looking at kind of apps, particularly shopping apps.
I know.
Are we spending just too much time on them?
No.
You
Have
don't
you
think
had,
that's
Neil,
the
have you
case?
had this experience where people deliver things to your house you can't remember ordering?
Yes.
It's terrible. I mean,
It's so bad. It's so
yeah.
bad. And when you think about that, kind of like, where does the responsibility lie? Because, you know, we had a sustainability event last week around kind of like consumption and the impact on the environment, and you know, holding businesses to account as part of that, and our responsibility as consumers. What's your kind of thoughts on those things?
Well, I think we do. I think we do online pretty much what we do offline. I don't think. I mean, and that's what this data is kind of saying. You know, this and other theories from this school all point in the same direction. You know, we go shopping. It's virtually habitual, and yeah, I mean, yeah, we do what's convenient and what's easy. And good. I mean, you know, great. I think the mobile phone is an absolutely fantastic thing. I mean, it is shocking, but it's also a fantastic opportunity to for you know for convenience, for all the things you can do with it. You know, watch films, listen to music, learn stuff, buy things. It's really, really great. And you know, the difficulty with apps is that people keep making them, and people download them and use them once or twice and then drop them. So you know, for the advertiser, it's going to be a question of finding the ones that have got legs, I think. But yeah, but I
But
think,
where, sorry, carry on.
but I think it's a good, you know, it's a good thing. I think as long as students don't do it in lectures too much.
But when it comes to kind of like, you know, consumer culture and looking at the kind of the impact that we're having on the environment, just want to get to that kind of bones of that. What, you know, yes, it's good, yes, it's convenient and it enriches our lives in many ways, but it's also been shown to kind of like, you know, damage the planet. We're obsessed with kind of like the latest trends, and so it has an impact on the planet, on sustainability. What, you know, is it all good?
I think we shouldn't mix up the phone and the shopping and the sustainability idea. I think I'm very encouraged by how widely, I don't know, people in my ambit are taking on the sustainability ideas.
Mm.
It's difficult to change your behavior, but you know, I mean, in terms of things like recycling. I think and recycling clothes and those things are, I can see people around me doing that a lot, especially young people, and that's really encouraging, and they're very passionate about it, which is important. Where it's going to end up with, but you know, we still have this slightly split personality where we say yes, we're very passionate about sustainability, but we still buy fast fashion
Absolutely.
occasionally.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I, hands up for me, myself for that. We've got some comments in the chat box. Alex has made a couple of comments. He says, I'm very interested in radio advertising. Stats show that at least across the USA, it's a huge market even for Generation Z. And also podcast marketing is getting bigger already. Again, Generation Z, apparently it works very well. Live streaming seems to work very well with this generation in terms of sharing data about an audience.
Well, yes, I love radio too. I think it's a fantastic advertising medium, and because your brain does so much, it fills in all the gaps. It's really, really great, and it's cheap and it's quick and you know, but like the way that apps are being sold now, radio is sold as being kind of segmented medium, so different types of music stations, news stations, and so on. I've seen 2 or 3 papers where the duplication of listening has been worked out, and the segmentation between stations is not as extreme as you might imagine, and that's, you know, if you think about it, you know, again, you know, usage of it's habitual. You get in the car, you don't change the station in the car. So the same pattern in TV from the 80s and the 60s, the same pattern we got here in 2020, and from earlier on this century, 2020, 2011 to 2012 or something. I've seen similar analysis in New Zealand for radio. So yeah, it's great. I mean, it's good that it's reaching a younger audience, but again, you know, I don't think we should be paying extra for particular stations that, or programs that are selling us a younger generation Gen Z audience. I don't think it works that way.
Okay.
I think we reach everybody. Yeah.
Thank you. Richard asks, if the study was just students, is it really representative? Alex said, surely it's a good start. I know reach is good, but students are smarter avoiding the actual apps. So in terms of the study, kind of like what, in terms of representation?
Okay, well, it is, you know, it's a tiny study, and I'm not claiming anything other than that, really. You know, it's 110 people, but on the other hand, it is a week, so that's, you know, that's quite a lot of app usage. I also recognize that they are a particular audience, so it is Generation Z, and that's all it is. I would like to do some more. I'd love to do a bigger study or get some more data that shows more demographics and have a look and see how that works. But to some extent, you might expect to see some kind of bias in this data towards different types of apps, even with this group, and it just isn't there. So, you know, it is a start. It's a start.
Okay. Thank you. Sarah asked, do you think apps will keep trying to sell their data as highly targeted for a while, or will they start pushing the idea of brand lift more?
I hope someone, you know, soon is going to be looking at doing brand lift advertising in apps. I mean, in theory, it should be cheaper, but why would you not do it? I mean, you know, you've got everything there to do it with. Will they start selling data? I guess so. Yes. I mean, I hope. Yes, I guess so. If there's anything to sell, people will sell it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Dag says the average for TV ranges from 3 to 4 hours per day. So phone use comes on top of that. That's a lot of time. People use both phones and TV at the same time.
Yeah.
Again, guilty. How do you sort out the effects or influences?
But if you can see people moving from one screen to another, um, I've seen it in my own home. I mean, I've seen people I've been watching TV with see an ad on TV and go straight onto the phone. And so again, with a panel, it would be really great to do that kind of thing. That kind of single source data is available, but it's huge and it's hard to crunch. Good grief. Screen stacking like that is, obviously it's an important thing, and but with better data set, it will be useful to have a look, definitely, because it for the sales lift part of it, that's exactly what is supposed to happen.
Brilliant, thank you. And then just off the back of that, you talked a lot about kind of TV advertising, and how you're able to kind of like hit broad range of people. And how much has that been affected by streaming services? For example, I don't watch TV anymore. I kind of watch everything via Netflix or Amazon Prime. Has that had an impact?
We watch TV in a different way, but we're still seeing ads, and younger people are watching this TV, but older people are carrying on with it. TV is still working. I mean, that first slide, if it didn't work, people wouldn't spend that money. It's a big wedge. So it does a particular job, and that's the point. I mean, it reaches all those people who buy a brand sometimes, and it just keeps what you know about the brand alive. And you have to have that, otherwise there's so much choice, there's so much new out there. Those brand structures just decay and fade. So the brilliant thing about TV is, I might buy a brand once every other year, but the advertising I see on TV keeps those thoughts new and fresh, and just revives them and brings them back to the surface again. So yeah, we are watching TV in a different way, but we are still watching it.
Thank you. And I think we'll come around to final questions. If anyone would like to ask a live question, please do pop your camera on. Bruno asks, could your work be blended with the recent work of Les Binet with regards to share or search?
I just got an email from Byron about that this morning. I haven't read it yet. Yes, it easily could. You just need a panel, and you just need some records of what the panel's done, and then you can. Yeah. I mean, these techniques, when you look at the alternatives and you see how the whole market operates around those alternatives, the choices that people make, tells you really important things. I mean, we've been looking at empirical generalizations here and stretching them to new contexts. And I think that's a really exciting thing when we can do that. When we got a piece of knowledge and we can make it work somewhere else, that saves somebody having to invent a new way of doing it. And I'm all for that. So great. Good question, Bruno.
Bruno actually says, sorry, Charlie, in the chat box for that question.
Why? It's fine.
I think we're about to wrap up, Charles. So any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to leave our audience with after your lecture today?
We're very good. Keep looking at your mobiles, but be careful when you're crossing the road. Or
Fantastic.
something. I don't know. Thanks for coming.
Thank you
Very
everyone
nice
for
to you.
thank you, Charles, for a fantastic lecture. Thank you everyone for tuning in this afternoon. Our next lecture will take place on the 2nd of December with Professor Karen Moser. So do keep an eye out for that. I'll be emailing you all to let you know about that one. The recording of this lecture will be made available on our YouTube channel in the next week or so, and you can share that with anyone that wasn't able to make it today. Charles, thanks so much. Audience, thank you too. Take
Thank
care.
you so much. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.